So, Paul, I am looking forward to our show today. We're gonna do the backstory, and to do that, we usually start out with an intro, and I'm going to play that in a second. But how does it feel being the guest instead of the producer?
It feels weird. I'm coming out from behind the screen. I'm the Wizard of Oz. Nobody sees me. Don't pay attention to that man behind the curtain.
And now you're going to have to do what you tell us all the time. You have to stay close to the microphone.
Yes, I won't do any of it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. So since you're not filling that role today, I've always wanted to do something to see if it works here.
Okay.
And so I'm going to do the intro. So people on Facebook Live will actually be able to see what the intro looks like for when we do this on YouTube. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But see how this works when I do it, and I'm sharing.
They're going to see the sausage get made today.
Yeah, see if it works.
Welcome to Church Hurts and the good, the bad, and the ugly about church, religion, and spirituality with a dash of recovery thrown in. If you've ever had questions about the church, maybe a bit jaded in your attitude toward religion, well, you've come to the right place. Our host, he was an honors philosophy student, ordained a Presbyterian minister, planted 3 churches, taught at a prestigious university, but now he's just an aging curmudgeon who never quits asking the question why. The host of Church Hurts and Dr. John Bass.
Now, I wonder how that came across. Do you think that went over on Facebook? You're the producer. You should.
I think it went over on Facebook. It didn't go over YouTube for some reason. My software that picks up my Facebook screen, I could see it on Facebook. When I went to Facebook, it was playing, but when it translated into my other software, it went blank. So I don't know why it on the YouTube channel, live channel, people listening live or watching it will not see that cool intro.
Well, that really gets us to where we are today at the end of 2020. I mean, your job has really changed in terms of you're going to have to now become, instead of being the radio guy, you're going to have to be everything, right?
Ain't it the truth? And it's weird that you say that because this is a religiously tinged show, so I'll use a religious reference from my Catholic school upbringing here, my good Irish Catholic upbringing here. I feel in many ways like John the Baptist over the last few years, wandering the wilderness, telling everybody a change is coming, a Savior is coming, and nobody's listening to me. I said it was live streaming all along. I thought it was live streaming audio, but now it's live streaming audio and video, and that really is the future, I think. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. That's not just me talking through my hat here, which would look funny.
But you're going to have to learn this stuff itself. It's not like you're coming in as the pro.
No.
I mean, you kind of are. You have a head start, but that's about it, right?
I have a real radio background, as you can tell from the voice. The last station I worked at, WMYK, K94 in Norfolk, Virginia. Had to learn to say Norfolk real fast. But, when we did radio, it was radio. It was just listening. Years ago, they started putting cameras in radio stations. You were a fly on the wall, and you got to see Rush Limbaugh or somebody else. They didn't talk to the camera, but you got to see what's going on in the studios. They produced the show. And that's been a popular format that's grown. But this idea of live streaming it to social media, to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and what does that add to it? Do we, like you did, do we have intros and outros? Do we break to things? It's not just a single camera. It's a television show in some sense. Not a real television show, because you don't have people sitting in the same room around a table switching 3 cameras. Could be, but it's probably more like something in between watching the morning zoo produced over this and watching a TV show where it's got graphics and titles and all the other things here. It's something in between. And the other thing that I've had to learn through the years, I say this all the time, when I did real radio back in the 80s, and it was over when it was over. We turned the page. Now it just began. We're going to take this and turn it into social media. We're going to run it through some editors and clean it up and add some things to it. We're going to push it out to social media and on your website and our website. The real work begins where it used to end when the show was over. That's very different. So we're having to adapt, and COVID was a big change of this. People weren't able.
Wait, before you get into that, Paul.
Yeah.
What I've been thinking about lately, and what's interesting, particularly with the way we're doing it, and I'm going to do a formal introduction in a minute, like I normally do.
Okay.
But the difference between if you're doing the daily news kind of show, there's a guy I listen to who does news from a Christian perspective, and it's really a podcast, but I mean, it's half an hour a day. The amount of work this guy must put into it. And
let's give him a shout out. Who is it? Just for whatever.
Yes, I will give. My name's going to go Al Moeller.
Okay, Al Moeller. All right, we'll check that out.
I think it's Al Moeller. Anyway, I listen to him every day for like half an hour. He's very conservative, like the head of Baptist Theological Seminary. But what I like about him is he's an academic,
right?
And he really comes at things from a thoughtful perspective, very legal too. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a law degree in addition to many others. But in any case, he does all this work for 30 minutes a day. Yeah. I don't want to go back and listen to what he said a week ago.
Right. So, and that's exactly what we've always felt with Real Radio. So I did the morning show. I was a disc jockey for a rock and roll radio station. So when we did that show, as funny as we were, whatever, it was very topical. It was about the day. We were trying to be funny. And who wants to hear that a week later? It's dated. It's out of date. So, but the new medium, this medium, is all about forever. It's the Netflix effect. When somebody discovers your episode, they don't want to just hear the next one. They want to hear the last 10. They want to go back and binge through the catalog. And if the catalog is too dated or out of date or unimportant, they'll go, oh, this isn't something that's timely or relevant. It's only timely for the moment. So it doesn't have any lasting effect. And whoever thought radio, a television newscast are not recorded and put up. I can't see what we're here in Southern California. I can't see what KABC ran last month for their news show, or I can't see what NBC News did a week ago. Why would I want to watch that? We don't want to, right? We don't really want to. But if I'm listening to a show, I might listen to Rush Limbaugh's show from a month ago. I might listen to Al Mohler's show from, I don't know.
We're talking like you're conservative. Let me get this in.
Whoever. I'm trying to appease you here, right?
Keeping you on track. That's supposed to be your job. But here's the official introduction.
Okay.
In January of 2020, I was invited to be a guest on the next chapter with Charlie Hedges. Now, I just want you to tell your story. Charlie, an old friend, had said to me, refusing to do much, if anything, by means of preparation. All I knew was that I was to meet Charlie ahead of time for lunch at an exclusive business club in Orange County, and then walk over to the studio of OC Talk Radio for the show afterward. Who would have guessed that by the end of the year, I would have over 35 shows of my own completed, and the producer of that show, a partner in crime of sorts. Somehow, while running a radio station, mainly catering to business interests in exclusive Orange County, California, he thought it would be fun to diversify and give his listeners a look into the spiritual and church issues, which they might have long ago put on the back burner or even dumped in the trash can. I, on the other hand, was looking for an outlet to bring to light some of the issues I was confronting daily with my work supporting clergy and church leaders of all types with all kinds of problems. 20 years ago, I had started a manuscript entitled Church Hurts, so that seemed to be a great place to start. Paul Roberts, the aforementioned station manager you see on your screen if you're watching live, and producer liked the idea, but we both realized that Church Hurts is rather an obvious statement to anyone with a bit of experience. So what's the point? It didn't take long for us to settle on Church Hurts and. Now, how do we punctuate that? Should it have a question mark at the end, or perhaps the dratted overused ellipsis? So today we're going to look back together at 2020 at Church Hurts and bring him in. So how's that, Paul, for an introduction?
Brilliant, as always. No, you really do put a lot of thought, effort into these things. And that's a classic example of what we're talking about here. That intro is designed to last beyond this moment. Whereas so much media is cotton candy, it's a tweet that's thrown out, causes an uproar, and is gone before the dust settles on the electronic ink. It's not meant to survive. It's meant to instantly arouse, and then there's a reaction. But it's not thoughtful, and it doesn't last the day.
So apply it here. So what did you expect? Because you've continued to be surprised. One of the things you mentioned throughout the years, like I kept thinking I was going to get this, and I got that.
Yes.
And somehow I think that's a compliment. It reminds me when I was younger, and that's a long time ago, but I would go out on the golf course, and when it would come up, you finally get to that place, you join up with another twosome, and so you have a twosome and a twosome, and okay, so what do you do? And when it comes around to being a minister, I was always a little bit chicken about that. I kind of ducked because I knew the conversation was just going to change, and they'd be embarrassed because they've already been swearing their heads off.
Right.
And one of the things I loved was, but you don't look like a minister.
Yeah, right. No, you don't.
I'm like, really? What does a minister look like? But you seem to be the same way with this show. I didn't expect this. What were you expecting? And you can't be talking to your kids when you're supposed to be on a show, Paul.
Hang on, I'm being interrupted. This is the home thing here. Talk for a second. I'm going to turn myself off here for 1 second here.
You are so bad.
So what is it?
I will tell a story of Paul a little bit out of school. Is that he has on his desk a bottle of old scotch. And I remember looking at it and being particularly struck by the fact of, one, in this politically incorrect environment, who's allowed to have, a bottle of hard liquor sitting on their desk. But it also impressed me because it had dust on it.
Yes.
And I could tell it had been there for a while. And I'm going to bring that up at the end of the show. But anyway, repent. You're supposed to be attentive, but you're COVID 2020 at home, right?
Yeah, right. I'm at home today here, and so I'm doing, this is another new thing. Kids walk in, my grandkids are here. They're likely to walk in, and one of them had a little problem. My wife has to come and says, I'm sorry, but I got to tell you right now, I'm on the air. I'm in the middle of a show.
What surprised you about the show?
I'll tell you what surprised me. Several things. One, I thought it would be in typical 2020 fashion, victimization and rants. I was a victim. I'm going to rant about that victimization. Here's why I hate the church. I was abused. I was misused. I was mistreated. I was misled. I hate it. And there's a lot of that. I'm an Irish Catholic. Oh my God, isn't that the story of the Catholic faith over the last few years? The shocking tales of abuse and misuse. And the evangelicals have their own versions of the fallen pastors and the people always getting caught with their pants down and everything here. I thought it'd be a short about that. And then maybe but it would start with the rant and the rage. It hasn't. That surprised me. You're taking the rant and the rage as if we all know it. I don't have to show it to you. I don't have to surprise. The church can hurt. Ooh, what any church you are. That's not a shocking statement. That might have been when I was a child, but we sort of take that as a granted now. The shocking part of your thing is, okay, and so what are you going to do about it? You're going to quit? Going to give up? You can throw it away?
The backstory to that, Paul, is that the guests that I have on have some horrifying stories.
Yeah. Oh.
And it was hard to get them to tell that, because for them, the end is, I don't want to trash the church, even though, yes, I really was, in a sense, victimized by it, or there are these horrible things in it. And it takes work on my part to convince them, no. Being honest about that stuff really does help. So how much are you willing to tell? And I think you've seen that in some of the guests. They'll say, well, I kind of got kicked out of the church at one point.
Yeah, right. And my only hesitation as we go along, and I think you've gotten better at this, is we have to go there because this is a social medium. This is something between a daily newscast, a daily radio show, and something else, a lecture, whatever. It's built on emotion. It's real stories. It's got to be, people will tune it out if they think this isn't real and authentic. If we just say, oh, no, everything's happy and wonderful, then I don't believe it. So you got to go there, but you got to get past it. And I wonder if that isn't one of the problems we have in 2020. We're ensnared. Pick your problem: politics, COVID, business. We're so ensnared in the immediacy of it, we can't see past it. What is
Okay,
the
let me do
out-
your thing though. Let me get you to you before we
Yeah.
get. You're in theory now about 2020.
right?
Let's talk about you because I didn't expect
Oh.
you to be as educated, as thoughtful as, I mean, you really are into this show. I mean, it's not, you're kind of like this. What happened in your life? You're one of those strange birds, meaning by that,
Right.
yes, you're a strange bird. but
I take that as a compliment. Yes, I'm
yeah,
always trying to
exactly.
be.
You like not fitting the mold, kind of like oneself here. But you're really, instead of the nominal Roman Catholic or the former Roman Catholic, you are one of the few that I've met in my life who are really a sincere
Yes.
church-going
I hope
Roman
so,
Catholic. When did you decide that you weren't going to lead that in childhood?
College. The last place that you expect to find your faith, I found it in college. And I found it in the strangest of ways. I'm away from home for the first time. I went to the University of Michigan, an extremely liberal institution, and I am pretty liberal on a lot of my issues. And I don't know that it was all born there. I was a little more probably conservative and suburban Republican type when I was growing up. But so I went away to college for the first time, and that's when you shed all the things that your parents did. You shed your inhibitions, you go crazy, you drink, you smoke pot, you have sex, you do all these wild things, everything. And I did a bunch of those things. I won't deny that. But I found myself longing. I went to a local campus church, and I found it refreshing because they stripped away a lot of the veneer, the things that I and probably other Catholics didn't like, the blind ceremony, and it felt more real. It felt more, maybe this is the early days. This is like the late 70s, so they were just trying to get into folk masses and stuff here. And it felt a little more authentic. It felt a little more genuine to me. They explained why we did some of the things we did, which I never had bothered to think about. The ceremonies all meant something once upon a time. They've forgotten their meaning through centuries, but they had some purpose. People said this is a meaningful way to do this. And out of that, I sort of made a choice. I found it refreshing. And I found it a way to ground me in a world that suddenly was very wild and crazy. I still needed some anchor.
But I'm trying to turn you on to, you also had the academic side.
Oh, yeah.
As a historian, it was really kind of your specialty, right?
Oh, I was a politics, and I majored in political science and history. I don't tell this story often. People don't somehow assume that I have this kind of background. But I went to the University of Michigan. I was in the honors program. I graduated magna cum laude. I wrote my senior honors thesis on the Nixon-Kissinger policy and its impact on the Cold War, something I was just discussing the other day with the busboy at Ralph's. I studied Latin. I was a very overeducated person. And at a time, I know this is very popular, and I'm not to focus on your world versus my world, but in the conservative world, this notion of that's where it all began, that the academics, they're all Marxists, they all corrupted us. I had some Marxists and crazy guys, sure, but I also had some very brilliant guys and some very interesting guys. And everybody was challenging me to think for the first time in my life. And so I had to think about, what do I believe? Do I still believe this stuff? Do I believe other things? And then the world that opened up to me. I worked at the campus radio station, which was all old hippies and dope smokers and stuff, wild people. But it introduced me to jazz and things I'd never heard of before. Never heard of this stuff. Politics opened me to all sorts of ideas about the world and everything, things I think I still carry with me. And a deep, as you talk about all the time, a deep grounding in, traditional knowledge, which we sort of ignore, traditional history, traditional theories, traditional good or bad. We studied. So
you had to come to the conclusion in the midst of that academically, this isn't just this spiritual thing I do for my side to like breathe and feel better about myself. You had to come to the conclusion that this Jesus stuff underneath all the ceremony and everything else was real.
And I don't think I was ever dissuaded to not think that. I don't really feel like I was indoctrinated in college, as many fear. Maybe it's more today than it was then, but it couldn't have been why. This was right at the end of the wild 60s. This is, I would think, when it's the worst. I really felt I was just challenged to think. And whatever you thought, good, bad, conservative, liberal, whatever, choose it. Don't do it just because that's why you've always done it that way. If you're going to believe it, then believe it. If you're not going to believe it, take it out, look at it, and decide what you're really going to believe in. And I think that's in many ways a lot of me was formed in those years of I didn't shed everything like so many did. I just looked at it again and took it on the shelf and dusted it off and said, and compared it to other things. There was a lot of comparative religion classes. There was we studied Marxism. We studied other sorts of things in college. And I wasn't like, I was like, ooh, I got to go to that and drop this. I just looked at it all as, hallelujah, I get to think about all this stuff. I never thought about any of this. And then to make a choice.
All right, reflect back with me. What we expect to do on 2020.
Yeah.
What shows first just jump at your mind? Because we've had quite a variety.
I'll tell you a trend that I've seen, and it's 2 or 3 shows, are people that you bring in who are ministers in some denomination, most of them Protestants, but not all of them, who didn't think they were going to go there, who in their own life found it later in life or by accident. They didn't start off a preacher's kid. They didn't start off on a path to, oh boy, I just love church and always wanted to be a minister, and this is what I felt the calling. For the most part, these are people who came to it reluctantly and later in life. And I'd love to hear more of that, because you sort of glossed through some of that, but I think that's underlying some of the theory here, is we all try and figure out what does religious mean in the next 20 years, 50 years, the 21st century. I think there's a lot of people like that who are finding their way to faith later rather than earlier.
The one show that I can't get over, it just plays in my mind all the time, is the show we had with Voddie Baucham.
Yeah, that was
that just, it was, I just saw a guy addressing the issue in a way nobody else was, and the fact that he was willing to come on the show blew me away.
And I'll tell you what struck me about that one, because I was prepared not to like him. I'm much more of a liberal persuasion than you are. I looked at some of the stuff he had, and it's very traditional based, at least it appeared to me. But what I found interesting about it and discomforting about it at the same time, which is a sign of a good show, so I felt about college. It upset me, a lot of things they were saying, and then that made me think about them. I don't know if I agree with that, or maybe I do, or it's not what I expected it to be. I thought that was all baloney, but maybe there's some truth in that. Is how he defied categorization. He didn't easily fit into a box of what he believes. And when he defended, he had a couple quotes, I wish I could think of them off the top of my head. And I thought, boy, that's really quite thoughtful. And that's really kind of thoughtful in the sense that I got to think about it. I'm not sure if he comes at, so he takes a very traditionalist view, in my opinion, of church and religion. Like maybe men should be the only ministers, and maybe women aren't called to the ministry. Wow, there's some controversy there. Things like that. And yet he says it in a way and explains it. I'm not trying to make a political point. I'm just trying to tell you, I've read the text, and this is what I see the text saying.
Sure.
And that's a different approach than coming at it from an ideological point of view, whether you are on the left or the right, whether you're a Marxist or march to the new order, whatever that's going to be called, this new populist kind of thing. It's not based on reason, it's based on feelings. And I find that very uncomfortable in both ends.
Right. Yeah, me as well.
They don't want to debate it or discuss it. It's just, I feel you're wrong. That doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel good. And it's like, okay, well, that starts there, but maybe that's the way it is. That's kind of what he was saying. I don't care how it feels. I'm telling you what I think. The facts, for him in religion, the facts go back to the book and the books, and so I'm going to look at the text, and that this is what the text is telling me. I can't, what do you want me to do? Tell you it says something different?
Well, I think with somebody like that, for me, and I got some responses. I mean, some people that were just, not happy because they don't like the viewpoint that he had.
Right.
But the credibility that comes with literally moving his family of 8 to an African country and saying, I'm going to serve at the school of theology that really is affecting a nation. and move a whole family there.
Mm-hmm.
Having been raised in South Central LA,
Yeah, right.
Knowing what Southern California's about, having kind of adopted Texas as his home state, and just, really being willing to take the heat, but he's living it. So you have to listen. And I think that's recently with Perry Downs, if you remember when he talked about the fact that he's a professor at a seminary, and yet he has, 35 foster children.
Yeah.
I mean,
you got a Catholic priest to come on the air in a well-known, high-profile parish in Washington and say, I'm not so sure I like some things the Catholic Church has done or did. And you're like, can you say that? You're on the air. He's like, yeah, I'm a person. I'm allowed to speak my mind. I'm not under censure here or something. And then the shocking thing he said very casually is what so many fear, people of faith, whatever your faith, as we feel that faith is shrinking and we're going into a secular world and a world without God, wherever that's coming from, laziness or left wing or right wing or wherever it is. And he said, it's the way the church started. I think we're going back to those roots. We're going to be the opposition. We're not going to be the majority. And we're going to be the example. And eventually it might take 100 years, 150 years to come back. But so be it. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, really.
So, and that struck me. And I'm always trying to get you not to go into too much of the academic stuff because I wonder if this is the medium for it. This is an emotional medium. It's storytelling medium. As you get people to unveil their stories of how they came to their faith, why they held on to their faith. Oh, the woman that you had whose name escapes me, Jenna or whatever, and just beautiful, person. She looks beautiful. She sounds beautiful. She seems a beautiful person. All this good stuff. She has this horrible end to her marriage. She's married to a minister, and it's ugly. And and then she's in a car crash, and wasn't one of her kids killed or something? Or like, oh my God, this is the moment you say, I get it. Then she's supposed to say, that's why I left the church and ain't going back. But she didn't go there. That's the unexpected twist to this tale. I know church hurts, and I kept going. I know the Catholic Church is filled with problems and sinful people. Wow, priests and stuff. I know it. So what do I do? Throw out the whole ideals and the ideology because of the failings of well, maybe, I don't know if it's the few or the many, but do I quit being an American because I don't like what's going on in politics here today? No.
Right.
You hang in there. And that's the hopeful and that I don't hear. Instead, we're supposed to vilify and drop out and quit, and so many have. They quit politics, they've quit religion, they've quit on each other, and you're saying don't quit.
Paul, I wonder, how do we get more people to actually give us their written responses? Because I get a lot of stuff personally, and people say, oh yeah, I was thinking about that, and they're listening to the show. And
I wish I knew. It's hard to get people to come out of the shadows.
churchhurtsand.org. There's a contact page. Just go on there and write to us, and we get those things. And we'd like to hear your story.
I'll give you a theory on that. And it started back when I was in college. I remember talking to a professor of mine once, and I said, what's it like different today? No, I'm sorry. This was a couple of years ago. And talking to a professor I'd met. And I said, what's it like teaching today? This is the 2000s versus when I went to school in the 60s and 70s. And he said, back then, we would purposely throw out something to provoke them. What do you think of that? And kids, oh my God, good. I got you thinking. I got you challenged. I got under your skin. You're listening. Now he said, I talk and it's like I'm on TV. I say anything and they just look at me. Waiting. I'm supposed to react? I'm supposed to respond?
When I taught at the university here, and I don't say their name just because I don't want to slander them, but anyway, I had this class in organizational leadership, and I'll never forget early when I'd first done it, I'd always said, it'd be fun. I really like teaching, and okay, so I taught like 3 classes there, but real quickly I was disillusioned because I asked the question to one of the students who just looked at me with this blank stare.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, am I not getting something? What's wrong? And finally he looked at me, he's like, you mean you want me to answer that question now?
Yeah, right.
Like, really, like, think?
Right.
I was so shocked that so many students were there
I'm
to
watching
get
it.
through the class, not to engage. They wanted to know, hey, teach me which boxes to check so I can get a good grade in this course. Oh,
Too many of our listeners today to this program are just listening or maybe watching without any expectation that, oh, you mean I can engage? I can respond? I can join the conversation? Yeah, that's the power of this new medium, and we haven't quite grasped it yet.
hey, you know what I did today? This is bad. I had to, somebody sent me an email and said, would you really send this guy like something that goes into his mailbox?
Yeah.
Now, I've been off the mailbox I hate the mail. And I've been off it for a long time. And I know my kids, they hate email.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's yesterday.
Yeah, my son basically like, it's text or nothing, Dad. And it's really annoying. Really, if you're calling me, there better be a real reason that a text wouldn't have worked.
Right.
It's like asking him a question, and it's like, you better Google it before you take his time to ask him the question.
My daughter, I would say, when the phone rings in her pocket, she goes, what's that noise?
Yeah. So here's what I did, though, for the letter. I literally went online and to send this card to congratulate this guy. And they said, really, we really want letters to fill his mailbox. And I went online and said, how do you send a card in the mail?
Yeah, right. I got to Google it. How do you mail anymore? How do you do this strange thing?
And then I got a site that said, okay, yeah, we're going to take a real card for you, and here you write what you want, and we're going to
they'll do it for you.
And it was cheaper than going out and buying a card, getting the stamp, and doing it myself.
But it took out that personalization where you were personally invested. The idea, I too don't write, but the idea of writing out a card or a thank you or writing out a letter, the effort that it takes to do that, the effort it takes even to just spend a moment and give you a rating or to tweet or to respond is so powerful to you and I, and
Right.
is so influential and happens so infrequently in a world where we all are just, it's the Truman Show. Remember the Truman Show with Jim Carrey? He's inadvertently living his life and everybody's watching it as a TV show. He doesn't know he's just a TV show. He thinks
So
it's his life.
we're saying hit the subscribe button,
Please.
give us a high rating, take time to actually write something out,
Please.
and we'll be really, really appreciative.
And we'll respond.
We're looking for next season. So, and Paul, I actually have something for us at the end here too.
Okay.
Because we can't violate the rule. We make everybody else stick by it. So
All
we
right.
need to as well. I want to end the show with a few words as I normally do, but this time I want to talk about you for a minute, Paul. While our business relationship is primary, it has been one of the highlights of my year and so much more than business. I kid you about not having the studio ready early enough to meet my guests and chat before the show, but you probably don't know why. I'm eager for the guests to meet you. I am proud of you. In Plato's Apology, he tells us Socrates said before his death, the unexamined life is not worth living. He surely wasn't talking about you. I love your reflections, your ability to put things in context, your care for your fellow man, and your driving passion for your family. As I'm often caused to reflect on how my children are seeing life these days, your daughter is never far from your mind, but neither are your listeners. How can people be helped by your time in a broadcast booth, pushing buttons and encouraging story from your guests more than theory? On the Catholic Protestant debate, you were wrong, and apparently always will be, because your devotion to your church is neither fleeting nor uncritical. Your politics are an absolute nightmare, leading you to be wrong once again, making me wish only to cancel your vote or convert you to another look at the Constitution. The nice thing is to know that while you're wrong, you're one of those sincerely wrong. Your motivations are lofty, really. You care. It's my prayer at the end of 2020 that our disagreements will continue as we seriously bend and slightly influence the other, refusing to part in a world where disagreements mean getting nasty, disassociating and causing general souring of the culture. The reality is that we're two old guys who love democracy, worship a God who sent his son on Christmas, and live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's my personality to want to play with our differences, but we certainly have a lot more in common than we do stuff that make us walk away. I pray I get a lot more Paul Roberts in my life before I die. It will mean a lot more laughter, more sincerity, more down-to-earth honesty, and then more laughter again. As to recovery, I do like that bottle of scotch on your desk. I'm envious. Don't take it away. For you, it gathers dust. For me, it would be gone by nightfall. To our listeners, thanks for hanging in with us and passing on these podcasts to friends who enjoy them. Please do go to churchhurtsand.org and drop us a note on the contact page. We'd love to hear your stories and thoughts and how you're out living that church hurts. Oh, no, how you're out there living that and life. And it's worth a thought for Church Hurts And. This is John Bash. And then we're going to see if we can do the video that would go, right, when we do it on YouTube. So,
well, that was beautiful. I want to thank you. That's probably the nicest tribute I've ever had, or at least in a long time. I don't do this to get that. I do it because I love it and I get a kick out of it, and I feel it serves a really deeper purpose to get people talking again who don't want to talk anymore, and to think who don't want to think anymore. And I love that that we can do both. Yeah,
from the heart, Paul.
I do. I appreciate it. And right back at you. I wouldn't be hanging in here with all the effort and whatnot into the show if not for it. I think this is the kind of thing, America, we need more now than ever. We've drifted into our bubbles. We've drifted into our slogans. We don't think, we just feel. We're like little kids. We're just raging in the darkness here. And
no wonder we enjoy working together. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So let's take us out here.
Well, that was worth a thought for sure, and brings us to the end of this edition of Church Hurts And. Next week, it's rumored we'll be walking on the edge of controversy, stirring the pot of denial, and finding movement of the divine. Our host, Dr. John Bash, is the shepherd with Standing Stone, a nonprofit ministry committed to caring for pastors and Christian leaders at risk of leaving the ministry prematurely. Come visit us at churchhurtsand.org. Tell us your story while you're there. Until then, remember, church hurts isn't the end of the story. Now go into the and enjoy God today, won't you?
So,
wow, very nice. You know what strikes me as that? Maybe it's because you say flattering things about me, but I'd love you to share that with people. If people want to know what the show's about, if people say, what's your show about? Am I thinking of coming on here? That might be a great example to give, or maybe a reduced version of or some part of it, because it really gets to the heart of the show and what makes it different. And that's what we're all looking for. We're looking to make a difference, and we're looking to be different in a world where everything is the same. Everything's loud. In your case, yeah, the church hurts. And I'll tell you 500 ways how the church hurts. Church sucks. Church is out. Church is dead. Church is done. How that here are people that didn't give up and then still disagree. That's
that's right. That's right. Still disagree and like each other, maybe.
Yeah, right. That's not something that used to be America. That was Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan's world. You know, that's the world that Joe Biden dreams of bringing back. I don't think he will. I'm not sure he's the man to do it, but he dreams of that. That's, where you can fight all day and then say, you got me. All right, I'm going to get you tomorrow, boy, you son of a gun.
That Tip O'Neill thing, my friend that you remind me so much of in New Jersey, he always brings that up, with him and Mitchell driving back to, Chicago together and, having to sit there for that many hours. It's like, imagine, putting Nancy Pelosi in a car, you know, and,
And Donald Trump and doing and driving them back together. Could they? I don't know what they would say to her. They're both creatures of the modern era. They're not built to. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I just have a romantic vision of old Irish politicians who were certainly bums and crooks and stuff. But that backslapping, that at the end of the day, as Biden tries to say, they don't take it personal. They believed passionately what they believed, but they didn't turn it into a personal bashing. And they felt that whether or not I liked you or not, I still got to do business with you tomorrow. I still got to find a way to make this work. It's when we stop thinking that way, it's all or nothing. Ronald Reagan used to say, what do you call somebody who disagrees with you 70% of, or who only agrees with you 70% of the time? A friend.
right.
Now they're an enemy.
Well, and that's where even politically, the things where I push you on, it's because I know how much we have in common. And it is hard, by the way, for me on the show. I mean, I would love to go down a lot of political routes. Probably, if I had to have a second choice of where I'd go in life, it would have been into law.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by lawyers that really just don't believe the Constitution and yet are constitutional experts. I mean, they don't believe in it.
And yet, oddly enough, that's one of the things that drove me out of the law. I did go to law school. I went to a rather good law school, William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I hated it from the minute I was there because it was all about, I'd say, well, who should win? They'd say, don't worry about who should win, who could win. Argue both sides of the case. No wonder politicians are so immoral, because they're all lawyers. And lawyers are taught, take your morality, take any viewpoint out of it. You're not there to advocate. You're just there to win. And it's somebody else's job to figure out whether that's right or wrong. Your job is just to be the best advocate you can.
What did you think about our show with Bill Diffenderfer, where he talked, what I really like, I think it's so important, he talked about the difference between the charge to him as a defense attorney and the charge to a prosecutor, and them being fundamentally different things. His job is to give the defense.
And he's a perfect example of what I talked about that I don't think I could live. He personally doesn't like a lot of the people he represents. He personally knows, he doesn't just believe, he knows they're guilty. And it's his job to fight like hell to get them off, because he believes in the ideal of the system, and I don't disagree with that. But I don't know that I could be the guy when the guy says, yeah, I killed that little girl. Good. Okay, now that I know, I'll get you off.
I think it's different than that. His job is not to win in that sense. It is to give them the best credible defense that he can.
And unfortunately, that the ideal meets the ground, because most of these prosecutors are not the highest paid people, so they're not as good as a lot of these high-powered defense attorneys, and they constantly beat and get people off, particularly those with money, and so the system doesn't turn out a fair result. It's supposed to. It tries to. I don't know what a better system is, but it's...
I was talking to this attorney a few weeks ago and mentioned that I had been listening to lectures by Scalia from like 2012.
Right.
And he just kind of looked and he said, why would you do that?
Right.
Like that is like a waste of time. I'm like, really? I mean, this is one of the biggest, most significant justices, from the last 50 years. Come on. But for him, it was just so dismissive of that originalist view of the Constitution. Ironically, what Scalia was arguing was that 50 years ago, 60 years ago, everybody was an originalist.
Yeah.
They didn't have that name on it, but the whole point was...
But having been in law school, I'll tell you that what is very disappointing is that I went there to learn the law. We don't learn the law at all. Law is just a set of rules. You can read those later. We're there to teach you how to think like a lawyer, and that's to find the exception, to find the unique variable, to make your case and if you can do that brilliant little thing. And so the law is always being twisted and turned and everything, because some bright guy says, well, what about this? Well, we never thought of this, and it could mean this. And well, yeah, I didn't really.
I would.
And it's not about intent anymore. So you want to talk about the intent, which is what the originalists all do. What's the intent of the Constitution? Who cares what the intent of the Constitution is? It's been twisted and changed by bright lawyers along the way who were applauded and patted on the back for that insight, that clever exception they came up. So it's constantly being amended and rewritten and changed and diluted and whatever it is. It's not, intent is meaningless. It's
So another subject. What are you doing for Christmas?
not much, like
Do
everybody.
you get mass? They have a drive-through mass or anything?
I haven't figured that out yet. I really am trying to figure, because oddly enough, this is the first time I was ask anybody in my family. I've been fanatical about this year. Like we go on vacation and we're some obscure place. No, I got to find a church somewhere. When I used to go out on the road when I was doing PR, and I had to go find a church, and people are laughing at me or saying, "Oh, come on!" I had people threaten me, "You can't. We're going to this." No, I don't care. I'm going, or I'm not. And yet, I haven't been to mass in months, really, because I'm scared of congregating, and I'm scared of getting it, and I'm not sure how to do it. They have some outdoor masses, but I'm not eager to. It's been a weird time. It's the first time in my life I've stepped away from church, not because I wanted to. I started because I felt I had to, and I've been reluctant to go back until I sort of feel it's safe. So I don't know. I tried watching it online. I realized that's not why I go to church. I don't go to church like a Protestant to be immerse myself in the Word. It is an immersive experience to get out, to force myself to get out, to hold hands, to listen, to sing, to do all these things. Think of somebody other than me. And I don't know. It's given me a lot of really pause for cause. I'm not going to quit, but I didn't think I could ever go a day without going, and now I've gone months without going.
Yeah. I think the whole
That's scary.
culture-
I think that's scary for the church. Church should be scared, because if people like me feel that way, the ones that just weren't that excited to go anyway, I ain't going to come running back.
I think the whole culture is going to have so many changes. I mean, just you're not going to be allowed to write a doctoral thesis on how 2020 changed the world, because there's going to be so many books and so
My
many.
fear, though, is the opposite. I mean, that's our tendency, and you would think that there are going to be commissions, what went wrong. There's going to be endless debates, what went right, what do we do, how do we adapt, the new normal. All that's the media's, our culture and our media wants to. It's a 3-step process, as I learned when I was an entertainment publicist. First, there's the fall. First, there's the build. Oh, these things are great. And then if that's great, then next week's going to be the fall from grace, the fall of the economy, the fall of the politician, the fall of the celebrity. And then it's the redemptive story, the rise again. It's that Hollywood loves that story. Up, down, up, down. So we're going to do that story. But in 1918, if that's any example, we had the largest pandemic. I studied history deeply, American history. I almost knew nothing about it. It was just glossed over. It's at the end of World War I. It's the beginning of the early 20s into the Depression. We didn't want to reflect. We just were glad it was over. And I wonder if a lot of people aren't going to be the same way. I don't want to talk about it. Let's just go back to the way it was. And yet I don't know that we will.
Well, who knows? I mean, at least we have Biden in there, which will slow down the economy. So
Maybe.
people start getting chicken.
All right, so there's a fascinating look right there. We do a show right now on alternative investment strategy, talking to very high-level fund managers. We've been doing it for several years. And I'm going to tell you that since Trump came in, the talk of the world, the financial world, is, well, this is going to have bad news. Every time he puts up a tariff, every time he does this, oh, that's it. The economy's going to crash. And it never did. It grew and grew and grew. Now, part of that's for a lot of reasons. Politics seems to be, they seem to have taken out of the consideration. There's more money chasing fewer stocks, so maybe that just keeps the stock market going up because there's no place else to put your money. Whatever the reason that we've had people on, and not liberals, these are conservative types, saying market's overheated, it's gone on too long, can't last, and it kept going up and up and up. Now Biden's in, the theories is, well, the party's over, regulations come back, economy's going to crash, or it's going to run out of steam. I don't know. It seems to have defied every understanding already. It seems to be the same kind of divorce from reality.
What do you think is going to happen in terms of all of the stuff with Hunter? I mean, you're not enough of a Democrat to be blind to.
I think I'll say this about two things, and then I got to go because I got a 2 o'clock here. I think it's another sad example of how rich kids, and I grew up with rich kids like this, rich kids trying to either prove that they're just as smart as their father or better, cutting corners, making deals, playing on the influence that their parents gave them. And the poor parents, and I'm sure in Biden's case, because he felt terrible, he probably overcompensated for his kids because his wife's dead and he's going on with his job and he's gone most of the time. He forces himself to come back every night and try and be there and be a good father, but how much can he really do it? I think so. He's been blinded. His kid's a cocaine addict, and big shock.
I'm
Big
talking
shock.
about, it seems to me, from at least what I've seen, that the money, that's one side of it. I agree with you on all of that. But when it gets in, I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be hard to make the case that Joe was profiting off of this.
I really don't think so. And I think the difference is this. One, he's the poorest of all the senators out there. He's not worth $100 million. At least if he is, it's hidden in a Swiss account somewhere that no one's ever seen it. He lives in this.
How about kids and brothers' accounts?
Could be, but I just don't think that's him. I really don't. Maybe I'm being naive, but I think he's of an old world. He didn't set out to make tons of money. He had opportunities to do it many times in his life, like many did on both sides of the aisle. Politicians certainly cash in on this stuff and make fortunes off of their connections. I don't think he did. I don't think he has. I don't think it's him. I think he probably pampered his son and probably, tried to, in some way, without, I don't know I hope he didn't cross the line and ethically do it, but I don't think he did it to profit himself. He's not that kind of guy. He's not Trump. He's not like most of these other guys. He's not a transactional guy. He's a old politician who loves the attention and loves to feel he's helping people.
I just think there's going to be a special prosecutor, and it's going to be a shit show.
Well, every special prosecutor has been a shit show. I mean, Whitewater started off investigating one thing and found Paula Jones. The Benghazi thing started off in one thing and discovered Hillary's emails. The Republicans were angry when Mueller didn't go far, or Dems when he didn't go far enough and look into taxes and other things to find. These special prosecutors aren't there to find out the original crime. They're to find other dirt. And there's always dirt on all these people because none of them, they're all politicians. They're businessmen. I don't think, I'd be shocked if Biden really profited from it, but I suspect it's going to show the level that we all hate, which Donald's kids certainly do, and every politician's kids do, this cashing in on their parents' fame and using the connections to make a fortune for themselves. And that's the world of influence that's the privileged world. It's not white world. It's money. It's connections. I grew up in it. I saw it. Kids whose fathers were presidents of corporations who were idiots and crashed cars every week and stuck cocaine up their nose, but still got away with it and still made tons of money because they were so-and-so's kid. I mean, Biden's kid they didn't talk about much. His first partner was Kerry's stepson, who was John Heinz of the Heinz ketchup fortune fame. And then he died and Kerry married his widow and inherited this kid. And he's the only one that pulled out and said, when Biden started going to Ukraine and stuff, said, I'm out of here.
You're doing my thing, remember? We're just going to talk for a second.
Yeah.
Or do you want me to play the intro? Let's put the intro on mine.
No.
I got to go because I got another show.
Cool. Thank you, Paul.
All right. If Biden's smart, he'll let it run unfettered, even if it sends his kid to jail. And I have a hope that he might do that. But none of these guys want to see their kids go to jail. And Hunter probably should go to jail.
All right, man.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.